Good afternoon, welcome to Tortoise Tech. In today's show, I have a full build from Evetech, and I'm going to be taking you through it component by component to show you what you could be buying in the very near future on the Evetech store. And the processor in here, it's the 5600X. So when Uncle Evetech received their 5000 series samples, they got 5600X. So I thought, what about a really cool entry level sort of, by the entry level I mean actually quite a capable build that doesn't break the bank with the entriest of the level motherboards and with the entriest of the acceptable graphics cards and with the entriest of the 3200 MHz RAM, just to show you how good that actually still is. So to team that up properly, we have put in the E2 120R cooler. This little 120 mil rad is actually extremely capable. It comes with the one RGB fan with the controller and with the remote. So I am using this kit's controller. I have taken the liberty of throwing in some extra fans, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just the base cooler, it does have a full push-pull setup on the radiator. And with that, the peaks that I saw on the 5600X were 65 degrees. So absolutely no problem cooling that chip down and keeping it in its boost range and keeping its boost up, especially with multi-threaded performance. The performance was actually so good, it actually slightly beat out my other benchmark tests, which we'll have in another review where I did a full gaming benchmark of the 5600X and 5800X. But the bullet points of those benchmarks and pretty much everybody's review is it's a very capable little CPU and very easy to cool. Well, that's why a little 120 mil like this is absolutely perfect and does a spectacular job of keeping it at, like I said, 65 degrees under all cool load. Next we have the Earthwatch 650 watt Pro. This is somewhat overkill, but I wanted just a good Antec 650 watt PSU for the build as a baseline. This one does come with a 7-year warranty, so it's got a nice long lifetime on it. But if you want to save $1,000 and rather put that into SSD or hard drive space or extra memory, then you can just get the normal 650 watt 80 plus, and that will be absolutely fine to power the system. No problems, because the GPU in this instance is pulling about 150 watts and the CPU a whole 65. Thanks, Auntie Lisa. Good cash. Moving on to the motherboard over here, and I've knocked it over again. But moving on to the motherboard, the little A50MA-Pro. It's a lot of A's and it's not an A minus, it's a dash A. Okay, Asian father, don't sue us for that. So quite a nice little capable board. It's got all your basics that you might need. Dual RAM slots, so you can have dual channel support. It's got one 4-pin in, and it's got a 7 or 6 phase power phasing design. It's not intended for like a 3900X or anything like that, but for a 65 watt chip, it's got more than enough power delivery. And that's evident with our Cinebench scores, where the performance was exactly in line with what I had from a 6000 Rand X570 board. So you don't have to buy that with these more entry-level chips. And yes, your upgrading path with this isn't the best ever. You do have NVMe support though, and then a 16-time slot for your GPU. And if you're going to add on storage, you do have a couple of SATA ports to go with it. You've got front USB 3 support, so the USBs on top of the Evetech Icon case will be able to function absolutely no problem. So it's got everything that you need, maybe not the ultra spicy flavors, but for using of this processor and getting it functioning, there's absolutely no problems there. The next is, old faithful, man, E2000 NVMe's. I absolutely love these. I've got this exact 512 in my build. It runs super well. This one has the little included heatsink, and even throughout my testing, it never exceeded 50 degrees, even with that little heatsink on it. So these things just run super well, I have to say, and the price versus performance and bang for buck is fantastic. 5-year warranty on this as well, which is it's long. It's a long time to be using, especially a 512. I think probably in 2 years from now, 1 TBs will be quite commonplace, about the same price as what this was at the moment. So more than enough warranty to see you through its lifetime. And then lastly, we have the 5500 XT. I reviewed these before and I felt like their price point made them a little bit irrelevant, but they've actually compressed somewhat, about 10 to 15%, and that makes it a lot more in line with a rand per sort of frame rate argument. And this particular unit is quite nicely done. It's got dual fans on it, it's got a proper backplate on it, it's got proper copper heat piping, and throughout my tests, the maximum temperature that I saw on this little guy was about 65 degrees as well. And that's in the case as it sits right now with the side panel on. Normally with the side panel off, you do get better temperatures because you've just got more access to airflow, as it were, through the environment. But then it's also more access to dust, and then I will tilt off the planet. Personally, I like a nice clean and tidy PC. These are the components surrounding that 5600X chip. And the chip is so good, and the IPC gain is so good that it's actually better than what, or in line with what I used to get on my 2700X, which is an 8-core 16-thread processor. But if you compare them in gaming, it's a non-compete. You're looking at 20% better performance on single-core performance for gaming. And that makes this little 5500 XT actually run pretty damn well. If we look at some of the benchmarks that I did do, you'll see it gets a comfortable 70 frames in Firestrike, which is no mean feat. That pretty much sets you up for any 1080p gaming at 60 FPS almost maxed out. Even Metro 2033, which is an extremely demanding title, generally has amongst the lowest FPS ranges of my benchmarks, it still managed a very healthy 49 frames per second, and that's absolutely maxed out. If you dial back anti-aliasing ever so slightly, you'll be over 60 frames, absolutely no problems. Things like CSGO got an average of 383 throughout the theoretical benchmark, and even Dota well over 100 frames per second, with me bombarding it with absolutely every single new particle effect that's ever been put into the game. Now, what about the build itself? What have I done that's a little bit different? So it's something that kind of irks me. It's something that kind of irks me in PC building and watching guys just use the standard fan kit and everything that's inside the PC. For 500 Rand extra on 18,000 Rand, this complete build costs 18,000 Rand. For 500 Rand more, you can get a proper fan kit that you can then completely fill out the zones and stuff within the case and get proper airflow through your machine. And that's going to increase your longevity, because if the components stay below 80 degrees C on average, their lifetime would just be that much better. I personally had a 2600K that I then upgraded to I upgraded to an 1800X from that, and that board is actually still running in my friend's PC. And the only reason that thing is still alive is because I was fanatical about cooling. It is such an important thing. And if you look at the overall cost of it compared to the overall cost of the build, 500 Rand on 18,000 bucks, it's like throw away 18,000 Rand because you didn't spend 500. It just doesn't make any sense, guys. I have to emphatically, I'm gonna peer pressure you. I'm basically peer pressuring you into doing this. Get proper cooling in your system. Get a little water cooler even, or something to that effect. Especially if you've got like a 6-core processor, whether it be from AMD or Intel, then it will be able to cool it absolutely no problems. And your system just runs that much better. You get better frame rates because the XFR, for instance, on the AMD chip, its boost technology relies on temperature headroom. So even with a low-end board, it still runs absolutely perfectly because the chip's always cool, calm and collected. So in the very, very near future, you guys are actually going to be able to almost buy this exact PC, and Evetech will be able to assemble it for you, complete with some nice cable management and neating up of all of the stuff, and leaving access to your extra drive bays and just making it look nice and clean and neat. Anyway, do hope you guys have enjoyed this little pre-built review. If you have, then hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the flip side. It's all okay, but I know, yeah, your silence speaks so